Welcome to the Empowering Transformation series, How to Release Stress and Past Trauma, Have a Peaceful Mind, and the Power to Move Forward. Hi, I'm Lori K. Coleman, and I hope that you will find many insights from this interview that we will have with Mary Allen. She is known to many as America's Inner Peace Coach, an author of The Power of Inner Choice and the host of Conversations with the Masters. She has interviewed best-selling authors, speakers, and coaches, including Dr. Dwayne Dreyer, Carolyn Miss, Byron Katie, Debbie Ford, and countless others. For over 21 years, her diverse, high-achieving clientele include business owners, entrepreneurs, moms, coaches, and even a couple billionaires. She helps people get out of their own way and enjoy exponentially more inner peace by transforming distracting stressors, achieving their goals, and embodying their highest self. Mary offers one-on-one coaching, leads the 5-day Inner Peace Immersion Retreat, and has produced numerous home study audio programs, including 5 Minutes to Inner Peace and Secrets to Profound Peace and Soaring Success, among others. Mary is a graduate of University of Wisconsin and both CTI and Coach U. All of her formal training, results, and client recommendations have earned her the accreditation of Master Certified Coach, awarded to the top 1% of coaches. Mary loves veggie smoothies and yoga. She lives in Laguna Niguel, California with her husband John and is a mother of 8-year-old twins. Welcome, Mary. I'm happy to have you with me today.
And thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here too.
Yes. I am thankful for this connection that we have together and what you'll be bringing to our audience today. Let's dive in where you just tell us about a stressful time that you had in your life and how you worked through that.
Okay, well, and of course, like you, I've had many, right? Like, which one? I'm like, oh, but since you've also been talking about trauma, I decided to go with one of the most traumatic, which was when back about 6 years ago when my kids were they were like a year and a half, not quite 2. And I was leaving my neighborhood and I didn't know at the time that it was illegal to talk on speakerphone with your cell phone. And I had my phone, at the steering wheel level, and I was leaving a voice message for my sister-in-law. And I get pulled over by this bully cop. And right away, it's super aggressive. It's, who are you talking to? And I'm just like, and as things went on, a couple times during our interaction, I said, you're speaking in an aggressive and angry tone of voice, and I'm not appreciating it. And, I'm trying to say that with the calm voice and so forth. And, kind of to fast forward, he hands me the ticket ultimately, and I feel inspired to write on the ticket in capital letters, this officer was verbally abusive. This, of course, pissed him off. And like, why'd you do that? And next thing I know, he's saying, hand me your keys. That's it. And I was like already feeling intimidated by this officer. And I was like, no way am I getting out of the car without a witness around. And I'm just like literally a minute from my house. So I instinctively rolled up the window. I checked in with Spirit, and Spirit's like starting the car. And I'm like literally moving forward. I'm like, really? Like, this is the thing to do. But, I'm like, okay, this is what guidance is saying to do. I'm like, I'm not going to argue right now. Made it all the way back to our house, of course, being followed by loud sirens, a whole bunch of them. And literally, as I pull in my driveway and turn on, open my garage, I look to my left, and the officer is literally pointing a gun at my head, and says, turn off the car, unlock the doors, get out of the car. I'm like, okay, don't want to be shot today. Right. All right. So turn off the car, unlock the doors. And before I had a chance to get out, they literally opened the car door yanked me by my ponytail and just threw me onto the cement.
And your babies are in the back seat of the car.
My babies are in the back seat. I'm in my driveway. And mind you, right now, like all of this has happened in 20 seconds because now I'm screaming my head off on the ground, thinking I'm going to get beat up next, right? So I have my hands up by my face. They were just really trying to put handcuffs on me. Yeah, didn't realize that. But literally, this is the exact moment my husband walks out of the garage. The garage door had just got done going all the way up when he came out. So this all happened in literally 20 seconds, right? So I get handcuffed and then, proceed with, talking to the officers there. So that was probably the most stressful situation.
And within that, you were still able to tune in and say, okay, what should I do? This is what I'm going to do. And tell us what happened after that.
Yeah. So what happened after that? And yes, in that moment, like there was like that divine, like, okay, here's what I'm supposed to do. But what was so crazy is when I got in after talking to everybody in the back of a police officer car, I'm on my way now to the Orange County Jail. And it's like now, like I'm having a moment of peace. This is like so crazy, right? I teach inner peace, but so naturally I would just like do what I do, which is just get really, really present. I'm like, you know what? It is a totally beautiful, blue sky. It's a gorgeous day. I was present to how those handcuffs are not comfortable, by the way, and those seats in the back, and there's no air conditioning, right? So I'm like present to the heat and like, wow, this is so uncomfortable. I'm present to the quiet and even say to myself, this is kind of an unusual way to get a break from my kiddos, right? You're a mom of four.
Thankful for the break.
I know, it's like anytime you can get it, right? In the bathroom, in a police officer's car, okay, right? So I'm like, okay, like I'm here in this moment. And as I'm just getting so present, what comes to me is the Ho'oponopono prayer, which I know you're familiar with, right? Which is, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. And I just felt just drawn to do this. And as it turns out, as we get to the police station, literally the officer was dumbfounded. He's like, I just got word that I'm supposed to take you back home. We're not going to book you. And I really think a big part of that came out of just, what, as long as my safety was literally not in jeopardy, right? Big difference, gun, not safe, bully cop, not safe. But okay, once everything I can just be present. I was peaceful and zenful. So, of course, there's a little bit more aftermath, as you know, right? So it's when we can be present in the moment, we can find, I'm a big believer of finding inner peace in any moment, right? And so that was me walking my talk there. But there is, trauma is also part of your summit. That I didn't stop with just, okay, I was present and then life was fine. When you have a traumatic event, there's stuff that gets stuck in your nervous system and so forth.
What do you like to do to help get that out of your nervous system?
Yeah, so in that case, and in general, one of the first things I did is I reached out for some support. Someone like yourself who was very adept at help managing trauma and walking me through what had happened and processing that. Like, I'm a huge believer of, it's like when we can feel it, we can heal it. And one of the best ways we can do that is by talking with a professional where we can work through sticky things instead of trying to figure it all out yourself. I mean, here, yes, inner peace, America's Inner Peace Coach. I know a lot of tools, but I also know when to reach out and get help. So that was a big one. I also started talking with other people. I ran into a colleague who was a taxi cab driver who'd had an even more horrific experience with a police officer, actually physically getting beat up. And she told me that one of the biggest things that helped her was acupuncture. And so after doing some talk therapy, I'm like, all right, like, when you like still have some residual gunk that needs to just get moved. And so I took her advice. I went to my acupuncturist, and literally a couple sessions, really, it's like, okay, it's like energetically, I got that shift. Thank
I
goodness.
remember the first time that I did acupuncture, and I didn't know the words to put to it. And to me, the only words that I knew to call it was like, I felt the spirit flowing through me. But what it was, and it could be that, but it was like the energy body started to move.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was the flow of the energy the way it ought to be. But I
Right.
didn't have terms to call it that. I'm just like, oh, it felt like a spiritual experience to me. It felt like God saying, it is good that you are doing this. This is healing for you, because it was just,
Yeah.
anyway.
Oh,
It's
and I mean, for me, it just, and I had done a bunch of acupuncture in the past, in the process of trying to get pregnant with twins, right? So I had a great relationship with my acupuncturist. So when I did go in, it was like, I think that much easier to drop in, like when you're receptive and just open to like, okay, like
that
realign.
receptive part, we need to talk about that, because I have had things be done for me and I was not receptive and I was blocking them. My,
Mhm.
my, my agency trumps everything. And if
Yes,
I say, no, I don't feel comfortable with this, then it can't help me as deeply as what it could have.
right.
So can you speak to that? And
Yeah, I think being receptive and even willing. Like I talk a lot about willingness, which um, Dr. David Hawkins, who wrote Power versus Force, talks about the scale of consciousness,
Mhm.
and the consciousness of willingness is in the high 300s somewhere. And this is really where we make shifts and we make changes, right? If we are dead set on being a victim, if we are dead set and I am not changing and it's their fault, and it's like you want to stew in the story, you will, right? But if you're willing, it's like that open, you're receptive. So kind of even just thinking, it's like just to allow, like I'm going to be willing, like I'm going to be, you know, like just telling yourself that can help open up the channels to allow those shifts to happen.
Yes, I know with myself, I had so much fear. I cared so much, and I still do, about um, about not getting taken off onto a weird path. And so
Mm-hmm.
I'd be willing to get the help that I needed for my physical and emotional health, but I would also have fear, like, oh, is this safe for me to explore? And you can't have the fear and the hope at the same time. It's you go into this battle of, oh,
Yeah.
it's very horrible. And so if someone was experiencing that, what would you tell that person? I know what I ended up doing, but I'd like to hear what you say.
And I think part of it is, you know, coming back to trusting yourself. First off, is this source, is this somebody who could really help me? Like you have to have a certain kind of rapport or belief in who is going to be in support of you, right? I mean, if you
Mhm.
think they're, a witch doctor or, you know, just full of crap, obviously that's not going to work. But you have to first just listen to your own guidance, like, can I trust? And I really do think it ultimately comes down to a little leap of faith. It's like, just surrendering, just relaxing that resistance and relaxing. It's like, okay, it's like I'm standing in my own way. I'm right now my own worst enemy. And I'm, going to try something different.
Yeah. For me, I would turn to prayer. I'd be like, I'm looking for help. I hear these things, and I hear it like three times in a row. I'm like, and that's my thing, three. So if I hear it three times, like, I
Right.
need to listen to you,
Exactly. Exactly. I know. Me too. It's like,
like
okay,
I
the
heard
first
you this
time you're
time,
like, yeah.
and I have this deal with my higher power. I'm like, I need you to tell me 3 times because I can hear so many things from different people. I'm not going to sit and run after everything.
Exactly.
If you do the same thing 3 times, I'll go consider it, and I'll pray before I go do the activity, and then I see the fruits of that. I see how I felt afterwards, but I tried to be open to the experience and not fearful of it. It was such a big challenge for me. I always had so much fear.
And it's so interesting, like you've just named kind of your recipe for opening yourself up to trust.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's like, okay, 3 signals, 1, 2,
Yeah,
3.
gotta have 3 times
And
sleep.
it's like, okay. And then, when we lean into God, it's like, okay, like ultimately we're trusting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
where the magic happens.
It is where the magic happens. Now, I recall when we were visiting earlier, you talked about another form of therapy that you enjoyed doing, and it was rapid eye. Can you
Yeah. So,
tell me what you think about that?
well, so when it comes to trauma, um, I didn't end up using the rapid eye movement therapy, but from all of my resources that I've now heard way more than 3 times, right? It's like rapid eye therapy has helped people through divorces when they were super stuck, like the awful breakups, the super traumatic experiences. My younger brother benefited hugely from rapid eye therapy, and I think we were talking that really, like, it really does something to just create that energetic shift. So that would be my third recommendation around, if you're dealing with a trauma and something, you just feel like you can't shake it with all the tools that you've been trying. um, Definitely get outside counsel and support. Acupuncture, rapid eye therapy. Those
Yeah.
are like my top 3.
And the way that I know that my body's having a hard time, I will get startled more easily. It's like I'm just like on high alert and just startled, and sometimes I'll, over the smallest things. And that's when I know that my nervous system is just holding on too tightly, and I should do some extra things to help it release.
Yeah, you need a reset, and we all need that. And there's little things we can do, like movement, yoga. I know yoga for me helps me huge. If I go too long without stretching, that kind of opens things up, or working out, getting a good sweat. Like, there's other things we can do to release emotions and kind of reset energetically, getting good night's sleep. But when we need to go deeper,
Right.
sometimes we can't do it all on our own.
Now, a simple thing that I have come across that I now teach is an eye movement. I'm not a rapid eye therapist, but I do a quantum meditation where people just move their eyes from left to right, or they'll do it in a figure 8. And that gets to different parts of their brain. And it's a little bit like EMDR. That's another kind of healing modality that's very, very deep. And it's interesting. If you move your eyes from left to right and you put like soft socks in your hands, and so that you feel connection and support, and
Mm-hmm.
you ask for the energy of whatever, the energy of fear, and then you just see that energy of fear leaving your body as you move your eyes left to right, and you see it as a color and shape going into that soft supportiveness. And you can have it go out through your feet as well.
Mm-hmm.
um, and that has really, I drop people into there, but I also just simply do that exercise sometimes to help me release and not even be in a deep meditation. Um, and the eye movement is it gets into different parts of the brain. It's really,
Yeah, it's so fascinating how it's all connected. And you can almost see, if you're just sitting, doing this with Lori Kay, right? It's like back and forth. It's like you can almost even feel kind of like, just, okay, like the brain is sort of reintegrating in a different manner.
yeah, let's be nice and safe in this little rocking place while we gently let the scary emotion go.
Right,
You
right.
know? So,
Oh, that's so good. I
yeah.
love that you do this powerful work, and I hope that there are a lot of people out there that are suffering alone and could really use your help. And so I'd love to encourage them. Somebody asked me on another
Oh,
interview, it's like, when when should you reach out? When should you reach out for help? When the stress is too much or whatever. I'm like, as soon as you're feeling like just stuck in a certain pattern, like this is the time to, reach out to someone like Lori Kay or myself, or, there's lots of experts, but we've got an amazing resource right here in front of you that I'm sure all of you already know.
I am so excited to bring this series to people. What I hope is, even if what isn't said in the interviews, that their inner guidance, because they have the desire to grow and to change and to transform, that things will come into their mind because of their desire, and that intent will bring things to them. And hopefully it's during my 30-minute interviews that I have with people, but just with them having that intent and putting forth that effort, they will be blessed in other, they'll hear it. They'll just know.
Yeah.
And that's my hope. That's my hope.
Yeah.
So
no doubt you're doing that.
I'm praying for everybody. I'm praying for this gift that I'm giving. So can you talk about what the biggest factor that contributes to stress and to frustration and depression that so many people aren't even aware of?
Yes. And that thing is resistance, right? And resistance, interesting, we talk about it because I had my little resisting arrest experience. So maybe it'll really stick with you when you're in a moment, like anytime you're not feeling at peace or happy, like you can know for sure there's some resistance there. And resistance meaning just pushing against something mentally or emotionally. Maybe it's a belief or, it's like we're just not liking the reality of the situation and we're pushing against it. We can do it. There's so many different forms of resistance that I think most people don't think of as resistance. Like worry is resisting a future that hasn't happened yet, right? Even being in judgment, like we're kind of resisting what is, right?
I appreciate these examples. Keep going.
Overwhelm. So overwhelm is resisting a single focus, right? Think about it.
Overwhelm is resisting a single focus?
Yes. It's like, think about it. When we're overwhelmed, we're usually thinking of, I need to do all of this. But if we okay, I'm going to just pick one. Like we can handle one thing, right? So overwhelm, self-doubt. Self-doubt is resisting ourselves, our strengths, our ability to handle something, right? We resist ourselves all the,
I have struggled with that for decades.
Right?
It's just over the last couple of years that, I still experience it during the summit. I'm just like, who am I to be doing this?
It still happens to me all the time. It's like, man, I am in my own way right now. I'm not liking this, right? But we can, the clue is, okay, we're not feeling peaceful. It's like, okay, let's get curious about what the resistance is. Stress, stress is kind of resisting the flow, right? It's like, no, it's like slow things down or speed things up, right? It's like, we're not okay with just relaxing and, all right, like this is how it's going today. Procrastination is resisting action, right? It's like, I don't want to do the thing. We finally do the thing, it takes 2 minutes, right? Or we do it and then we feel really good. So I just invite, just to get super curious. There's so many, I think I have a worksheet here somewhere. There's so many flavors of resistance. We could talk a lot about this, but there's lots of forms.
I appreciate those examples. It's like we need to hear specifics to even have our brain be like, oh, that's called resistance. Didn't know. So if you know that you're having resistance, what do you do?
Yeah, well, obviously the first key is really just to relax that resistance, or just to notice that resistance, right? Mm-hmm. That's really the first part. It's like, oh, I'm onto myself. And then we've got a process that we can share. We can jump into that, or we can talk about one other thing before we...
Oh, there was another thing, an important relationship interfering with your inner peace. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes. So this important relationship totally ties right in with resistance. And, we often think of the most important relationship as well. It's with ourselves, or maybe it's with our higher power, or it's with other people. And I would say, I think all of those are very important. I don't want to diminish any of those, especially our relationship with God, but our relationship with reality is really the single biggest relationship that we need to be mindful of as we are embarking on getting into greater alignment with a sense of peace and power within ourselves. So,
keep speaking to that.
Yeah. So when we have a dysfunctional relationship with reality, like we think that other people, the world should be different than they are, it's going to be impossible, right? If you think your husband should, not not throw his white socks into the colored bin, right? You're the one that's experiencing peace every time he does that.
Right? Or not experiencing peace.
Or not experiencing, yeah, you're the one not experiencing peace when that happens. Mm-hmm. When we resist who somebody is being, like we're the ones that are triggered inside and bottled up. It's like they're just doing them, right? Our kids. I love one of the greatest examples, Byron Katie. I don't know if you're familiar with her work, the work of Byron Katie, but she talks about this a mom, and she was so frustrated at her son for he was only doing 90% of his homework. And she just was so upset with him. And but the reality was he was only doing 90%. Like, this is what he was doing. And she ultimately got that when I resist him only doing the 90%, it's like I'm saying to him, don't be who you are. Don't be who you are. Don't be who you are. And she kind of had a big moment. It's like, how do we know what should be? It's like what should be is what is unfolding. It's like reality is always kinder than the story we tell about it. And once we're tuned in with reality, once we can just see, we might not like reality. Don't get me wrong, right? There's a lot of our reality right now that is very challenging, right? We've got COVID, pandemic, like our world's like, I get it. We're resisting reality. I'm resisting it too, right? But what we want to try and do is see it as clearly as we can, because once we see it as clearly as we can, then we have a chance to make new choices in the face of, whatever reality is unfolding.
So how do we know when we are putting stories into reality? How do we decipher that?
Yeah, that's such a great question. So reality is like just kind of what is before we start giving it any meaning, story, or interpretation, right? So something like a tree is gonna it's gonna be here before us, after us, right? It's like the reality is it's a tree. We can call it a beautiful tree, an awful tree. Like once we start labeling the tree, right? Like it's just a tree, right? So we start leaving reality as soon as we start putting labels on something being good or bad. Also, it's objective, right? And this is where it gets super tricky, especially in our news media cycles. Like what really is reality, right? Because we got one set of facts, we got another set of facts, right? And we have to kind of just, when it comes to news anyway, is kind of just stay a little bit in I don't know mind, right? It's like, well, there's this. And, ultimately truth bubbles forth from the ashes, right? Mm-hmm. But if we get too sure that, oh, this is really reality, if there's so much charge, there's so much energy, reality is neutral. Like it's just unfolding.
I love to use the word curious. I'll say,
me too.
This is curious, their perspective. And I try to be aware of both perspectives. Oh, look, it's curious, that perspective. Oh, it's, I want to hear both camps and look at them both as curious.
Yes.
And then my mind is just open to whatever God wants me to do for actions to make what is truly in alignment with who I am and what I believe.
Yes.
And I don't know.
Yes, that is so good. And and I'll use this example. hydroxychloroquine, right? Like this is a big one these days. It's like, it's killing people. It's like a cure drug. And, it's like, okay, it's like, we can just listen and be curious. And, there's probably some truths on each one, but maybe we just observe and see what happens, right? Because things keep unfolding. And this is true in our own lives, right? If we just, skip all the crazy outside world, we got enough to deal with our own world. But without putting stories on, the kids behave a certain way or they don't. And it's like, okay, well, like kids are being kids, right? All right, wow, I'd like them to do something different. It's like, all right, let's come back and approach it. But we just have to kind of keep coming back to reality without exaggerating it or minimizing it, without distorting it with our stories, without denying it, right? There's this day and age, I think there are, I remember with, spring break, all the kids in Florida kind of denying that, hey, there is a pandemic going on, right? Good example, right? All right. And many of them did end up getting COVID, right? So, we just want to look in my book, the Power of Inner Choice, which is here. There's a whole chapter on embracing reality, which really goes through just 6 dysfunctional ways that we are with reality, just so that we can get onto ourselves and kind of tease it down and just get down to as most objective as possible.
How do you step into personal power and act on something that you feel like needs to be acted upon? If you feel good about, you've distilled down the reality and you feel like there are actions that you need to make to help, what do you do to step into that personal power or to know what actions should be taken?
And I think this is where it's like, okay, it's like, we see something objectively. This is really, we've got to tune in and get present with ourselves and look for our own higher guidance. Like, what am I called to do in this moment? What do I need?
Which might be different than another moment.
It absolutely. It's like, and the moments change. Like sometimes, I don't know, sometimes I get ideas for a Facebook post and then, I think later I'm like, nah, either the moment's passed or I don't feel inspired to share that. And sometimes I do, but we always have to come back to that present moment in terms of, all right, what am I inspired to do? What can I do? I love, the different things that people have done. A colleague of mine who has an interview radio show and was like, hey, I want to do something with Black Lives Matter. And you know what? So she pulled together, she found 6 Black powerful women and they had this amazing conversation, so there's a way where, boom, listen to her calling. I listened to it. I thought it was super powerful. We all need to follow kind of what our divine guidance is and really trust that, our voice matters in how we want to show up. Right. And that goes for, either side of the equation. I like you. I like to listen to all perspectives because I think that helps us get closer to the truth and even just chipping away at, what's really the reality here? Because it's not always so clear.
Right. Oh, I am not sure where we should go next with our conversation. Let's see. You wanted to talk about the resistance before we got into something else, but I can't remember what the something else was going.
Okay, well, so why don't we get into the 6 questions that can transform inner turmoil in minutes, right?
Okay, thank you.
That'll just, and as we, and this is another great thing that still, when I get in those moments of just in an emotional traffic jam, right? It's like either the overwhelm is just over the top or, there's health issues and then there's childcare issues and then there's, trying to get work done and, just we get into our emotional traffic jam. These 6 questions are particularly useful and I call it the inner peace reality check. And we'll go through the questions real quickly here, and then as part of my gift, you'll be able to download the worksheet. So in case you didn't catch everything, just know that you'll have that. But I'd love to invite people, as we're going through these questions now, is to run through it, right here and now. So if you have a situation where you're feeling stuck, or in an emotional traffic jam, kind of think of something right here and right now. If you're feeling so great because you've been listening to Lori Kay's Summit series and you're like, I'm good, I'm in the flow, I'm just like, it's good and it's getting better, just think of something where you'd like to create more momentum, because you don't have to be, totally a basket case to have these questions be really useful for you. And I also encourage you to write down your answers. That's another important part, because it allows us to get more objective, and it allows our minds to get slowed down as well. So the first question is, what's the reality of the situation? Right? And here's where we just want to name as objectively as we can what's going on. And the other day, I just did this. So I'm going to give you a current one. If I can find, where's my notes? Well, I might have to go off the top of my head. The current reality, oh, here, yeah, right in front of me. So this was right when Governor Newsom had changed. Our schools were going to open. I'm like super excited. I've got programs I'm going to be launching, and I was planning on my kids being back in school so I could really focus and deliver, right? So that like spun me up. I was like, oh, okay. So just to give you context, right? So what's the reality of the situation? Well, my kids have been home since mid-March, right? And I've had zero help. I was preparing my launches and kind of counting on being able to focus 100% for 6 hours a day. I'm exhausted, right? So I check in just with other realities, right? I'm hungry, I'm tired, I had a water skiing accident the week before, I've got sore ribs and my sore foot, like you just start naming all the things, right? Competing demands, maybe even doubting myself, right? So just naming reality. Then we're going to go to question number 2. And, as you go through, you're going to name different realities, hungry, tired, 3,000 emails in my inbox, like whatever is up for you, right? Just, okay, like bump, 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 right? Okay, next we're going to the second question, which is, what am I resisting, right? So this is why we talked about resistance. So we get really curious. So in this moment, what am I resisting? In this moment, I was resisting being interrupted. I was resisting just my own power, my own ability to get things done, right? I was also resisting not being able to be there 100% for my kids, right? That tug of war, like I want to do this, I want to do this, they're competing, right? Sometimes we can be resisting a tough choice. Sometimes we can be resisting self-care. Like we just want to get curious. Am I resisting rest? Am I resisting slowing down? Am I resisting the present moment? Am I resisting an action step? Right? So just to kind of get curious about what you're resisting. Am I resisting imperfection? Right? There can be so many things. So now we're going to move to the third question. So first, what's the reality of the situation? What am I resisting? And then third, what will it cost if I keep resisting? Yeah, this one is the one that I was like, I always find kind of annoying, right? I'm like, oh, if I keep resisting, I keep feeling like crap, right? I'm going to be less productive. It's not good for my immune system or any of our immune system when we're stuck in stress and stuck in overwhelm and all of the yunk. It compromises our immune system, which these days, none of us need to be doing that. It also ages us. So those of us getting up on the years, it's like just to know 5 minutes of intense stress both lowers our immune system for the next 6 hours, but it also frays the telomeres. And the telomeres is what is working in our cells to rejuvenate. And so the more we damage those, the more we're aging ourselves. And not to remind us of all the yucky stuff, but we're naming like the cost, the lack of productivity, the lack of focus, because this is now leverage for us to create that opening, right? To get unstuck. So then we go to the fourth question, and that is, what can I appreciate about the situation? So this one feels a lot better. This is also going to help us reconnect to our sense of power, right? We've just named the minutia, named the consequences of being stuck in the muck. But now, what can I appreciate about the situation? And the mind could go to a place of, well, I don't appreciate anything about the situation, right? In the moment of schools being shut down, I wasn't appreciating anything at all. I'm like, you know.
Just the grr.
My husband always asks the question, you know, what's going on? I'm like, everything, right? Like we've all been there. It's not one thing, it's everything. But if I could appreciate something about the situation, it's like, okay, it's always an opportunity for growth, right? All right, if I can figure out how to get myself through this pickle, maybe I can help other people get through their pickles, right? So, you know, I check in, and in this situation, all right, you know, this is more opportunity to be part of my kids' schooling and really see up close and personal how they're going to progress and get to be there. And I really honestly enjoyed it in the springtime way more than I thought. I really loved that quality time with my young kids. You know, what else I could appreciate? You know, this is an opportunity to get creative and resourceful. It's an opportunity to really step up into my power in the biggest way, right? So there's a lot of things I could appreciate. And, you know, maybe I could even appreciate that, all right, maybe it's not safe enough to, you know, go back to school. And so, yeah, okay, you know, maybe we go there, right? Part of me was like, but, right. But maybe we can appreciate that. So, then we go to the fifth question, and this is probably the most empowering question of all. Question number 5 is, what are my options? What are my options? So given the reality of the situation exactly as it is, what are my options, right? Okay, so in that moment, well, I hope nobody's offended, but my first option was, can we sue the governor? Okay, and options, here's the thing with options, they're neutral, right? So whether you love them, hate them, doesn't matter. It's like, you just name options, right? Other options, okay, you know, I can stay at home, really make the most of my time. I could move the launch dates for my programs out. I can just even more fully step into my power. And ultimately, I decided, you know, I could get some help. And I could lean into my community and get help and support, right? And so I started really brainstorming. I'm like, all right, you know, what are my options for help, especially in the next 2 weeks before school starts? I started researching camps. I looked, called all my kids' friends and found out what are they doing. Found out that the Montessori school was open. Talked to them. Found out that is an option. Reached out to a couple past babysitters, started, you know, it's like, and ultimately, and I love this, when Lori Kay and I talked the week before, I had no idea, you know, how I was going to swing it with kids here, but I did. I hired a babysitter for the week. It has been amazing. It's actually almost half the price as doing the gymnastics camp that I was going to do with the kids, but it's been so productive, right? And it was by being in the muck and then really exploring options and then doing question number 6, which the question number 6 is, what will I consciously choose? So it's not enough to have options. We got to pick something. So I kind of leaped ahead. The one I picked was, okay, like I'm going to get some help and give myself 5 hours a day to focus. So it's been hugely powerful. And as you do your own brainstorming, you'll see, you know, it's like, okay, just allow the options to open up, brainstorm away, and then pick one.
Yeah. And when we were connecting previously and your twins came in, I was just like, I adore that kind of a thing. It's like, that's real life. You know, there's interruptions and this, and you just love the interruption because it is what it is. And you, well, it's easy with kids because you love the kids.
Right.
But,
and it's,
but
it's a great example too of just embracing the reality of the situation, right? We can
resist
it and be like annoyed and upset, or they come in, it's like, you know what? It's like, hey, here's my kids, and you know, it's like another moment of connection for us.
Yeah, yeah. It's, you know, it's just learning to go with the flow and not be so upset that it has to stay in a certain box of what you perceived that it has to be. Because when you say it has to look like this, you're just going to be so frustrated, and yeah, that's not called peace.
Yeah, and you know, and we so often resist change and doing it different, and of course we've had a mountain of, you know, in all of our lives. I'm sure there's not hardly a single life that's not been interrupted in some way. So, you know, I think fundamentally as, you know, we like to stay in our comfort zone, but also this is the opportunity where growth happens. And, you know, maybe really the gift of COVID is that it does kind of push our buttons and trigger us enough to where it's like, okay, you know what? It's like, I'm going to rise above this. I'm going to make some shifts and changes. I'm going to do things differently. I'm going to find a way to make it work one way or another.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, there's definitely for that. Well, thank you so much for your time. Is there anything else that you would like to share with us before you leave us? And I encourage our audience to take you up on your little gift, which I think would be very beneficial to take a moment.
Yeah. I think just the last thing to say is just to really think of inner peace as that inner compass of, okay, I'm either in alignment with my life and myself, or I'm not. And when we're not at peace, like just allow that to be kind of, okay, like here's an opportunity to get back in alignment. And through the tools that, you know, we've talked about here, it can be, you know, doing the inner peace reality check. It can be getting present. It can be leaning into a resource like Lori Kay. Like just do what you need to allow yourself to come back to a place of peace. And the gift that I'm offering, you've got a link to send people to lifecoachmary.com/love, LOVE.html. And there you can download the worksheet for the Inner Peace Reality Check. This has got extra notes, but there's also a blank one for you to write in your own answers. And also an ebook and audio of 5 keys to inner peace now. And these are really the 5 core fundamental guiding posts that if you really are committed to being in alignment with yourself and your sense of peace and power, these 5 keys are just super foundational. It's the recipe that you need, and you can listen to it on audio or you can read it, whichever is your favorite modality to listen to.
Oh, Mary, I'm so glad I discovered you. You know, I was praying to God. I'm like, help me find the people. And I had 2 acquaintances. Oh, I didn't even know these people who recommended you. So God brought those people into my life to even help me find you. You know, it's just like, boop, boop, boop. How many steps did God take to help me find you?
I love that. And I love what you're doing and how committed you are to helping people in, you know, in finding the relief, because suffering is optional. And it's always that, I guess that catalyst, it's the rub to help us get back on track. And there's so much we can do to make that happen. And you're a huge part of that. So thank you for reaching out. And I'm so glad that we ended up doing this.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, I would like to say goodbye to my audience, and I hope that your day will be filled with peace and love and even moments of laughter, that you can see the beauty around you and connect with what is good happening in the world. And I wish you the best in your day today. Goodbye.